Wadr. Promoting dialogue.
It's 6 p.m. in Dakar and Conakry, 7 p.m. in Lagos. Good evening and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM around the world on wadr.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. A deadly attack in north-central Nigeria claims 50 civilian lives. Senegalese Prime Minister Sonko briefs the National Assembly on the state of affairs.
Ils essaient de trouver une fausse solution à un vrai problème.
They are trying to find a false solution to a real problem. Illegal immigration is not a solution, and no one can justify this desire to leave the country at all costs.
Guinean government to combine presidential and parliamentary elections amid calls for inclusive dialogue from the opposition, and Benin's President Talon hosts religious leaders on peace, unity and the 2026 elections.
We also discussed the issue of jihadism in Benin. Our only weapons are prayer and nature. We must support the Beninese government in addressing this challenge, and we are committed to doing our part.
Stay with us for details of these stories and more.
Here is Abdullahi Hassan with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast and a warm welcome to our listeners in Gambia, Ghana, Liberia and Sierra Leone. Newslink begins in Nigeria with the news of yet another deadly attack by armed men in the north-central state of Plateau. The raid occurred in the early hours of today when unknown gunmen stormed the Zike community of Abasa local government area of the state. According to sources and viral pictures and videos shared online, properties were destroyed and several houses were burnt to the ground. Christopher Ticho reports.
Residents of the affected community in their accounts to local media said tens of armed men stormed the community in the early hours of Monday, shooting sporadically into the air and at anything that moved. The initial toll confirmed 36 people killed, but at the time of filing this report, sources say the toll has risen to over 50. Several others who sustained injuries are currently receiving treatment at different health centers. Similarly, destructions worth several millions of naira was recorded in the attack despite efforts by local vigilantes to repel the gunmen. A community leader told the media that a team of vigilantes, including himself, were on patrol in other community when the attackers invaded the village. Security agencies in the state are yet to comment on the attack, which is coming less than 2 weeks after 52 people were killed in some communities in the Bokos local government area of North Central State. The Nigerian Police Force and the Nigerian Army top brass had announced the deployment of patrol teams to the state to prevent the escalation of the conflict. Known for decades of inter-ethnic religious commune clashes, Mutwang Caleb, governor of the state, has described the recent security in the plateau as a sponsored genocide. There are yet to be any confirmed reports of this allegation.
Christopher Ticho with that report will bring you details from that attack as they unfold. Beninese President Patrice Talon has spoken about his government's efforts to promote interfaith dialogue and strengthen social cohesion across the country. Talon disclosed while hosting a delegation from the Framework for Dialogue of Religious Denominations. During the meeting, Patrice Talon touched on security concerns including terrorism in northern Benin. Imo Edet has more.
During the meeting, religious leaders raised concerns about the outdated law governing associations in Benin. They argued that the current legislation hampers the effective operation of religious and faith-based organizations. They also addressed issues surrounding secularism and tensions between certain religious groups, urging the government's support in promoting harmony. The 2026 general elections also featured in the discussions, with the religious leaders sharing their perspectives on the national electoral outlook. In his response, President Talon acknowledged the vital role of religious denominations in fostering peace, tolerance, and unity across communities. He expressed his commitment to maintaining close collaboration with religious leaders in addressing both social and community challenges. On the upcoming elections, the president proposed the organization of the following up meeting and said the outcomes of that engagement could contribute meaningfully to ensuring a successful and peaceful electoral process in 2026. Michelle Aloko, Secretary General and spokesperson for the Framework for Dialogue of Religious Denominations, shared remarks after the meeting.
What pleased us even more was his announcement that by June, he plans to bring together nuns, evangelical churches, and other religious groups to work towards establishing a law on religious denominations. We also discussed the issue of jihadism in Benin. Our only weapons are prayer and nature. We must support the Beninese government in addressing this challenge, and we are committed to doing our part.
The meeting, according to both parties, reaffirmed the government's commitment to supporting religious initiatives aimed at peace building and community development.
A report by WADR's Cotonou correspondent Aziz Adam Souley and voiced in our studios by Imo Redet. Here in Senegal, Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko was at the National Assembly earlier today, where he responded to questions from MPs on critical and concerned developments affecting everyday living. Sonko was questioned on issues including layoffs in public service, the economy, justice, youth employment, and illegal migration. Regarding illegal migration, the Prime Minister talked about the situation of Senegalese citizens persecuted in Mauritania and more recently in Brazil, which resulted in one death. Augustine Colley tells us more.
Ousmane Sonko was first questioned about the dismissals in several public sector departments. Several hundred employees have been dismissed since President Bassirou Diomaye Faye came to power. The Prime Minister clarifies.
There was no legal basis for the recruitment in these departments. A person recruited for political reasons without any competence has no place in the administration or in any public service.
The head of government also answered a question about the independence of the judiciary. Members of parliament have described the judiciary as subservient to the Senegalese executive.
Justice has been discredited for several years. It is said that the time of justice is not the time of men. The time of justice is the time of men, because justice is rendered in the name of men. And when it comes to justice, one principle is important: celerity. Justice must be dispensed swiftly. That's a fundamental principle of law.
The economy is also on the agenda, with MPs questioning the high cost of living. Again, the Prime Minister tries to reassure.
Lowering prices is one of our top priorities. We are working on it day by day. And as you can see, the price of unscented rice has dropped because the state has waived several customs duties in a difficult context.
This plenary session was marked by the boycott of members of the Takuwalu parliamentary group, as well as several non-attached members, including Cheno Alassane Sall and Anta Babakan Ngom.
Augustine Colley reporting there. And in the Gambia, citizens and especially victims of right violations under the Yahya Jammeh regime are following the trial of Michael Sankoria taking place in the U.S. The proceedings at the district court in Denver began last Monday with a 12-man jury inviting witnesses to the stand. So far in the historic trial, 9 witnesses have testified against Korea, an alleged former member of the Jungler, notorious death squad responsible for several deaths, torture, and forced disappearances. Initially accused of 6 counts of torture and 1 count of conspiracy to commit torture, Korea now faces 6 charges after his defense counsel argued he was coerced into committing the crimes. Yusuf Taylor, the managing editor of the investigative platform As Can We in Denver, covering the trial, speaks to WADR.
The first week started very much on track, pretty much. So now, currently what we have is that there are 6 counts. Before that, the jury selection took center stage because in the US, it's quite different. They had about 70 of them that came in and they went through selection of them and they ended up with 12. Just to give you an idea of some of the testimonies, Yaya Dabo, he alleged that Michael Sankoria tortured him, beat him up, put plastic bag over his head with pipes, sat on him with a block. They cuffed him in the back, and then not only that, tortured him using some sort of plastic bag. Photographs of these wounds were tendered in evidence in court. So far, approximately, we could say 8 or so witnesses have testified against Korea. So on Monday, it's expected that maybe 2 witnesses may testify. They are still trying to figure out one of the expert witnesses, and submissions have to be made to convince the judge to tender one of them. So that's for the prosecution side, depending on how things go. Then after that is wrapped up proper on Tuesday, if that happens, then the jury will be going off to deliberate, which we don't know how long it can take. But if that goes well, maybe Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, we may get a verdict and then an announcement as to when the sentencing will take place.
Yusuf Taylor, the managing editor of the investigative platform Ask Can We, joins us late and second half of the news for more analysis.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
As a reminder, we stream live on wadr.org and on Facebook at WADR English Service. Opposition political parties and social movements in Guinea have voiced out denouncing the transitional government's announced plan to hold 2 elections simultaneously. The joint ballots are the presidential and parliamentary elections. The forces' views of Guinea, in particular, is demanding the establishment of an inclusive dialogue framework to define an electoral timetable and to appoint an independent body to oversee the organization of future elections. Francis Boniface tells us more.
During a meeting on Friday with a technical delegation from ECOWAS, Prime Minister Amadou Wuriba announced that the presidential and legislative elections will follow directly after a constitutional referendum scheduled for September. He said the decision is meant to prevent institutional imbalance. The move has been welcomed by Boubacar Sidiki Jallo, president of the Union for Popular Movement, a party that supports the military-led transition. Meanwhile, the Force Vive de Guinea coalition condemned what they described as a unilateral decision by the government. Opposition leaders argued that the executive branch should not have sole control over the electoral process. An ECOWAS delegation led by its political affairs officer was in Conakry to discuss strategies with the government for mobilizing resources to support Guinea's transition back to constitutional governance.
A report by WADR's Conakry correspondent, General Alpha Ibrahima Balden, voiced by Francis Boniface. Elsewhere in Côte d'Ivoire, supporters of the African People's Party Côte d'Ivoire over the weekend gathered in large numbers in Dabo, a town about 50 kilometers from Abidjan. The event was to celebrate the 3rd edition of the party's Renaissance Festival. Former President Laurent Gbagbo headlined the event with a major political rally, reaffirming his determination to contest the upcoming election and expressing strong confidence in his party's chances. Gbagbo also addressed the reasons behind PPACI's decision to suspend its participation in the Independent Electoral Commission, citing long-standing dysfunctions dating back to 2009. He specifically accused current Prime Minister Robert Mambe of overseeing the fraudulent registration of over 400,000 voters during his time as the head of the Electoral Commission. Although still officially ineligible to run due to a conviction by the Ivorian judiciary, Laurent Gbagbo assured his supporters that he will be their candidate in the October presidential election. And just before the break, let's take you to Ghana, where the government's new policy of deporting foreign nationals involved in illegal mining activities, popularly known as Galamsey, has been touted by the Minister of Interior, Mohamed Muntaka Mubarak. The minister's loud echo of the Mahama-led administration decision comes in response to the backlash from various pro-environmental groups that criticized the move as non-deterrent and illegal. Muntaka, however, insists foreign nationals are benefiting from Ghana's slow legal processes to sneak back into the country's forest to mine. An administrative loophole, he says, will soon be closed. WADR's Nadiri Tete reports.
Ghana's Minister of Interior, Mohamed Muntaka Mubarak, has come under severe backlash for proposing to repatriate foreign nationals caught engaging in illegal mining in the country. Civil society groups, the minority in parliament, and the opposition New Patriotic Party insist that such suspects should be prosecuted and sanctioned in accordance with Ghanaian law. Under Ghana's Mineral and Mining Amendment Act 2019, Act 995, non-Ghanaians found engaging in illegal mining or facilitating such activities face a minimum fine of 100,000 penalty units up to 350,000 penalty units and imprisonment between 20 to 25 years or both. The law further states that if such offenders are liable for deportation, they must serve the full prison term before being deported. However, speaking at the commissioning of a new regional office of the Immigration Service at Mampong in the Ashanti region, the sector minister defended his directive. He argued that the move is essential to match the scale of the Galamsey fight and to protect the country's remaining forests and water bodies from further destruction.
Our prime aim is to protect this country. And most of them, when they get into our country, when you arrest them, they pretend that they don't have even passport. They give you fake names. When you take them to court, they take advantage of our delays in our court system. They get bail, and before you realize, they relocate to other communities and continue the harm that they are doing. That is why we resolve that for two crimes, one, finding yourself in our forest, and two, doing the frauding. For these two, when we get you, our option is to take you back into your country.
As the country battles to reclaim lands and rivers, the question remains, should convenience take precedence over justice, or must the law be followed to its full extent, no matter how tough the fight gets? These are questions begging for answers. For WADR, Nadiri Tete, Accra.
You are listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and live at wadr.org. Here's a reminder of our top stories. A deadly attack in north-central Nigeria claims 50 civilian lives. Senegalese Prime Minister Sonko briefs the National Assembly on the state of affairs. The Guinean government to combine presidential and legislative elections amid calls for inclusive dialogue from the opposition. Beninese President Talon hosts religious leaders on peace, unity, and the 2026 elections. Still ahead in the news, we have the guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Many thanks for staying with us. The governments of Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Guinea have secured funding to advance the third phase of the Mano River Union Road Development and Transport Facilitation Program. This ambitious initiative seeks to enhance regional trade, improve connectivity, and foster socio-economic development across the Mano River Union area. WADR's Monrovia correspondent Abraham Parker reports.
The overall objective of the program is to boost the post-conflict economic recovery of the MRU area by improving road infrastructure and promoting intra-community trade. To fulfill their commitments, Liberia's government, through the Ministry of Public Works, has signed a supervision consulting contract with Sierra Consulting Limited, which is collaborating with the local firm BK Enterprise Engineering Consultancy and Construction Services. This phase, supported by financing from the African Development Fund, the Islamic Development Bank, and the national governments, will focus on developing and asphalt-ing 114 kilometers of road, 50 kilometers in Liberia, and 64 kilometers in Sierra Leone, constructed to ECOWAS standards. Additionally, feasibility and design studies will be conducted for another 107 kilometers of roads in Guinea and Liberia. A notable feature of the project is the construction of a 276-meter bridge over the Mancona River, which will connect net gaining in Sierra Leone, valued at US $98.19 million. The program includes investments in socio-economic infrastructure and capacity building initiatives targeting women and youth. For Newslink on WADR, I'm Abraham Parker in Monrovia.
Politics,
analysis on major news,
social matters, and all. This is a guest.
Joining us this evening, our guest is Yusuf Taylor, the managing editor of the investigative platform As Can We. He joins us from Denver in the United States of America, where the trial is ongoing in the case of rights violations and torture against Michael Sankoria, an alleged former member of the Junglers, notorious death squad in the Gambia during Jammeh's era.
The trial has started. What the role will be is they are going to deliver the verdict, whether Michael Sankoria is guilty on all remaining 6 counts. Now, if he is guilty, they will rule and say that he's guilty on each and every single count. They will have to rule a verdict. So, and then for each maximum sentencing for each, if he is found guilty for conspiracy and actual torture, the maximum is 20 years, which would be a total of 120 years. So that's the role that the jury have to play. Just to give you an idea of some of the testimonies, Yaya Dabo, he alleged that this Michael Sankoria tortured him, beat him up, put plastic bag over his head with pipes, sat on him with a block, they cuffed him in the back, and then not only that, tortured him using some sort of plastic bag, which he burnt, and the plastic bag dripping malt fell on his body. Pictures and photographs of these wounds were tendered in evidence in court. We saw the vivid images during the court.
You actually said testimonies have been heard from some of the witnesses. How many were they in number? And if you can tell us more about some of the testimonies that have come in against Korea in this trial.
Yeah, so in the second day, the testimonies started pouring in. First of all, of course, we to set the stage, there was an expert professor, Maggie Dwyer, from the university, who talked about the Gambia history, because these jurors, remember, like I said, they are American citizens and they don't know much about the Gambia. So there was this professor who laid down the history and to give an idea of the security apparatus and also about coups. Then Aliu Job was the first witness to point out Michael Korea. He was working in the Accountant General's office and he was also caught up into this coup because it was all a crackdown against a failed coup in 2006 March, led by then Nur Cham. So actually, this Aliu Job, he was actually beaten severely because he had some contact with Cham and helped Cham to flee by sending Cham money. So Job was then apprehended, and then the junglers held him after he was put in front of an investigative panel. And this is similar for most of them, all of them that I'm going to name out. Yaya Adabo was the second witness for the day. And then on the third day, you had other witnesses coming in. Most importantly, Sheni Bayo came in, and then Special Agent Matthew Gifford, then Demba. What they described that was very similar is that all of them were put in front of a panel.
So Michael Korea, supposing he's found guilty of these crimes, he may serve up to over 100 years in prison. Will he serve this time in America or back in the Gambia?
Well, it seems most likely that he will serve it in America, except something is different considering what we've observed from all the other cases. I'm not saying that things may be different, but, human rights watchdogs will now start also shouting out, he was convicted in America, and then talk about the status of our prisons, whether they are not tried to double punish the man. But in all fairness, of course, not belittling the suffering that some of the witnesses have befallen, but looking at what has happened for the other two cases, those that have been convicted, they have been held in those countries' jurisdiction where they have been found guilty and sentenced. So he may maximum serve 120 years in prison in an American prison. That is a life prison. But there are some victims of Michael Correa, at least 11 of them, which we have already written a publication about, that have died. And unfortunately, if he does get the maximum prison, that would also serve as a form of justice for those people as well. Yes.
Yusuf Taylor, the managing editor of the investigative platform As Can We. Up next is a sports update with Sankule Janko.
Hello there, warm welcome and thank you for joining us. The Confederation of African Football, CAF, has concluded the final draw for the CAF Under-20 Africa Cup of Nations Egypt 2025 on Sunday at the Egyptian Football Association headquarters in Cairo. The tournament, scheduled to run from 27 April to 18 May 2025, will feature 13 nations battling for continental supremacy and 4 qualification spots to the FIFA Under-20 World Cup Chile 2025. The draw revealed exciting group stage fixtures promising a thrilling start to the competition. Host Egypt, 3-time champions, headlined Group A, where they will face Zambia, Sierra Leone, South Africa and Tanzania in what promises to be a closely fought group. In Group B, record 7-time champions Nigeria are drawn alongside former winners Tunisia as well as Kenya and Morocco, setting the stage for some of the tournament's most anticipated matches. Meanwhile, defending champions Senegal begin their title defense in Group C, which also includes the Central African Republic, DR Congo and Ghana, the latter aiming to reclaim the title they won in 2009. The same year, they became the only African team to win the FIFA Under-20 World Cup. The CAF Under-20 AFCON Egypt 2025 will follow a 3-group format. Group A contains 5 teams, while Group B and C feature 4 teams each. The top 2 teams from each pool, along with the 2 best third-placed teams, will progress to the quarterfinals, with the tournament concluding on 18 May 2025. And that's it for sports. It's back to you.
Sports report to you by Sankule Janko. And that's how we conclude this edition of Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Maojo Juf, Mamko Dufai, and Umo Daniego for technical support. Do interact with us via social media platforms X, Instagram at WADR English, and on Facebook, WADR English Service. I'm Abdullah Hassan. Good evening.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Nibe County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio, Banga, Liberia, Radio Gulf FM